Traditionally, these are questions for philosophy, but philosophy is dead. Philosophy has not kept up with modern developments in science, particularly physics. Scientists have become the bearers of the torch of discovery in our quest for knowledge. What all this goes to show is that nonsense remains nonsense, even when talked by world-famous scientists. What serves to obscure the illogicality of such statements is the fact that they are made by scientists, and the general public, not surprisingly, assumes that they are statements of science and takes them on authority. That is why it is important to point out that they are not statements of science, and any statement, whether made by a scientist or not, should be open to logical analysis. Immense prestige and authority does not compensate for faulty logic. Apologist Frank Turek insists that science doesn't say anything, scientists do. While it is difficult to come to a consensus of an exact definition of science, we can safely say that science itself does not interpret the data it produces. Every scientific statement in the long run, however complicated it looks, really means something like, I pointed the telescope to such and such a part of the sky at 2:20 a.m. on January 15th and saw so-and-so. Or I put some of this stuff in a pot and heated it to such and such a temperature, and it did so-and-so. Do not think I am saying anything against science. I am only saying what its job is. And the more scientific a man is, the more, I believe, he would agree with me that this is the job of science, and a very useful and necessary job it is too. Facts, figures, data, calculations, and any other information gained by science requires reflection, hypothesis, and interpretation. This interpretation is done by persons affected by bias, personality, intention, honesty, and most importantly, worldview. This is not to say that proper science cannot be done, but only that science itself is not immune to human error. Science is a tool used to understand the external world around us, and by its very nature as a tool, it comes with certain limitations. When these limitations are transgressed, science ventures into philosophy to attempt what it doesn't have the capability to do, namely, to interpret. Science must not impose any philosophy, any more than the telephone must tell us what to say. The idea that science alone has the ability to both gather and interpret information has become a worldview known as Scientism. Scientism, similar to logical positivism, claims that only that which can be empirically verified, tested, or measured should be taken into consideration when seeking truth. Peter Atkins defines scientism perfectly when he says, "There is no reason to suppose that science cannot deal with every aspect of existence." This worldview, by its definition, excludes metaphysics, a branch of philosophy dealing with cosmology and ontology, as well as the supernatural. If scientism is presupposed, then philosophical naturalism often follows. Naturalism is the belief that space, time, and matter compose all of existence, and that there is nothing above or beyond the physical universe, or as Carl Sagan once put it, the cosmos is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be. If scientism is true, then all things that can be known are empirically verifiable, testable, or measurable. If there is anything that can be known that isn't empirically verifiable, testable, or measurable, then scientism is false. Given that naturalism, a consequence of scientism, is only capable of answering questions about the material universe, this would limit the kinds of questions we can ask. If scientism is true, we should expect that questions outside of its scope are either nonsensical or not worth asking. Is it true that it is science that is best equipped to answer all of our questions, at least all the questions that need to be answered? World-renowned scientist and head of the Human Genome Project, Francis Collins, agrees on the limitations of science, but expresses genuine interest in the questions it cannot address. Science is the only reliable way to understand the natural world, and its tools, when properly utilized, can generate profound insight into material existence. But science is powerless to answer questions such as, why did the universe come into being? What is the meaning of human existence? What happens after we die? One of the strongest motivations of humankind is to seek answers to profound questions, and we need to bring all the power on both the scientific and spiritual perspectives to bear on understanding what is both seen and unseen. James W. Sire echoes Collins, stating that these questions are not only valid, but fundamental to the human experience. The most fundamental issues we as human beings need to consider have no departmental boundaries. What is prime reality? Is it God or the cosmos? What is a human being? What happens at death? How should we then live? These questions are as relevant to literature as to psychology, to religion as to science. Nobel laureate Sir Peter Medawar, warning his readers of Scientism, writes, "There is no quicker way for a scientist to bring discredit upon himself and upon his profession than to roundly declare, particularly when no declaration of any kind is called for, that science knows or soon will know the answers to all questions worth asking, and that questions which do not admit a scientific answer are in some way non-questions or pseudo-questions that only simpletons ask and only the gullible profess to be able to answer." The fact that scientism cannot answer the most fundamental questions of the human experience should arouse our suspicions, but the problems for scientism run much deeper than insufficiency. As mentioned earlier, scientism, if true, cannot allow any knowledge beyond its scope. Should we find any such knowledge, scientism doesn't have a leg to stand on. In God's Undertaker, Has Science Buried God?, Oxford professor John C. Lennox writes, "Take the claim that only science can deliver truth. If it were true, it would at once spell the end of many disciplines in schools and universities. For the evaluation of philosophy, literature, art, and music lies outside the scope of science, strictly so-called. How could science tell us whether a poem is a bad poem or a word of genius? Scarcely by measuring the lengths of the words or the frequencies of the letters occurring in them. How could science possibly tell us whether a painting is a masterpiece or a confused smudge of colors? Certainly not by making a chemical analysis of the paint in the canvas. The teaching of morality likewise lies outside science. Science can tell you that if you add strychnine to someone's drink, it will kill them. But science cannot tell you whether it is morally right or wrong to put strychnine into your grandmother's tea so that you can get your hands on her property." In April of 1998, Christian philosopher William Lane Craig debated atheist Oxford professor of chemistry Peter Atkins on the existence of God. Atkins asks,
Do you deny that science cannot account for everything?
Craig replies,
"Yes, I do deny that science."
So what can't it account for?
to which Atkins probes,
So what can't it account for?
Having taken the bait, Craig reels in Atkins with a powerful response.
I think there are a good number of things that cannot be scientifically proven, but that we're all rational to accept. Let me list 5. Logical and mathematical truths cannot be proven by science. Science presupposes logic and math, so that to try to prove them by science would be arguing in a circle. Metaphysical truths, like there are other minds other than my own, or that the external world is real, or that the past was not created 5 minutes ago with an appearance of age, are rational beliefs that cannot be scientifically proven. Ethical beliefs about statements of value are not accessible by the scientific method. You can't show by science whether the Nazi scientists in the camps did anything evil as opposed to the scientists in Western democracies.
At this point, Atkins appears as a deer caught in the headlights, staring into an audience captivated by Craig. Craig continues,
Aesthetic judgments, number 4, cannot be accessed by the scientific method because the beautiful, like the good, cannot be scientifically proven. And finally, most remarkably, would be science itself. Science cannot be justified by the scientific method. Science is permeated with unprovable assumptions.
At the end of Craig's 5-point answer, the moderator turns to Atkins and quips,
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Yeah, okay.
The final point made by Craig was the nail in the coffin for scientism. If insufficiency or opposing evidence isn't enough to kill scientism, scientism kills itself by failing to meet its own standard. When statements fail to meet their own criteria of validity, they are self-refuting. To recognize if a view has suicidal tendencies, first, pay attention to the basic idea, premise, conviction, or claim. Try to identify it. Next, ask if the claim applies to itself. If so, is there a conflict? Does the statement itself fail to live up to its own standards? Can it be stated in the form A is the case and A is not the case? If so, it commits suicide. What all this means to say is that the scientific method or the very idea of science cannot be justified scientifically, but must be assumed or concluded by philosophy. There are many categories of thought, including philosophy, history, mathematics, formal logic, ethics, theology, and more. Science is one of many, and certainly not necessarily the most important. A proper worldview is a healthy diet consisting in many disciplines of thought, using what each has to offer. There is no reason to handicap thought by limiting its scope. The most brilliant among us have realized that the human experience and quest for truth are multifaceted mountains requiring a variety of tools to climb. Those who venture forth with science alone only get so far. Albert Einstein knew this emphatically when he wrote to R.A. Thornton in 1944, "I fully agree with you about the significance and educational value of methodology as well as history and philosophy of science." So many people today, and even professional scientists, seem to me like someone who has seen thousands of trees but has never seen a forest. A knowledge of the historic and philosophical background gives that kind of independence from prejudices of his generation from which most scientists are suffering. This independence created by philosophical insight is, in my opinion, the mark of distinction between a mere artisan or specialist and a real seeker after truth. Scientism fails to see the forest from the trees. While scientific advancement has been an overwhelming force of truth, it is by no means the entire spectrum of knowledge, and those who cling to scientism will inevitably inherit its blind spots. It is blind to its own insufficiency to answer every question. It is blind to the knowledge outside of its scope, and most importantly, it is blind to its own self-destruction. The next time someone dismisses you with the "only science gives reliable truth" canard, ask if he wants you to take his statement as fact or simply as unsubstantiated opinion. If fact, ask what testable scientific evidence led him to his conclusion. As it turns out, this claim is not a fact of science. It is a philosophical assertion about science that itself cannot be proven by the scientific method and would therefore be unreliable according to this approach.